Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Live. We're going to attempt to do a full page scene here in some nice bright autumn colors. Today would have been my dad's birthday, and when I was thinking about it, I thought, wow, he would have been 99. So anyways, he liked fishing, so I'm going to do kind of my, I don't know, whatever depiction of a kind of a fisherman's paradise type of thing. I usually do this every year around this time. And let's see if we can come up with a new composition using some of the new stamps here. And I think I'll start off, as far as my foundational stamps, with one of the new cabin stamps right here. So anytime you're doing any type of scene, it's quarter page card, standard card size, or larger format. There's a lot of different images you can start off with. You can work front to back, foreground to background if you want to. But I tend to think it's easiest to start off with whatever your main subject is going to be. So if it's a waterfall or a tree in the forest or something like that, cabins, covered bridges, etc. I tend to think it's the easiest thing to do is to start off with your larger items and then to work smaller. But that's just one approach, okay? It's like packing luggage or something like that. Just starting off with your larger pieces and working smaller, to fit other things around those larger pieces. It's not always like that. I mean, it's just, in terms of kind of the first few images at least, okay? Okay, I've got tack and peel on this side, so I didn't cover that up first. I'll have to use that later, so I'm not covering it right now for this initial cling foam impression of the cabin right here, okay? All right, so that's situated right now, so all of our other imagery is going to work around it. Now, this is a large stamp, and I'm not just going to strictly be working large to small because I'm thinking about using my large seaside cove in this piece, but the seaside cove, while it's a really dominant image, it's kind of being used as a filler image, okay? Hello, Debbie and Patty, good to see you. It's 7:18 on Monday morning. Good morning to you. All right, let's see here. We have some other things to work around here. I think I'm going to use these trees like this right in here, and then we'll build on some extra shoreline right over in this area afterwards. Now these images right in here, if I was doing a smaller piece, I might take the time to color these trees for my impressions, multiple tones, okay? Different colors of green in here or something like that. Same thing with this one. But this is a large scene, so I'm just going to do my, as you can call it, foundational elements. My composition just in black, and I'll bring in the colors later. I mean, I might bring in some colors in the impressions themselves, but I'm just not going to bother with that here. But it does make the pieces look a little bit richer if you, employ color in the impressions themselves, because you can do multiple tones of green in a tree such as that one right there, this these evergreens here flanking this kind of deciduous one in the center. But again, this is going to be a really large scene, so we're going to make it, instead of employing color in the impressions, we're going to be employing ease. How are you both today? If anyone else is on, thanks for joining in. Glad to have you. All right, so we have these trees coming around this way. I want to do this as a cove where it's like coming around this way too. And I want to have a bunch of trees here in the foreground. Okay, so I'm thinking about a composition for that right now, or just a manner in which to do that. Which I don't necessarily have in mind. I just kind of have the gist of, I guess what I'm going for here. I'm just kind of making it up as we go here. All right, so this is a good filler image. I tend to, whenever I'm doing like large scenes, I tend to utilize a lot of rocks because they provide a really good foundation, but you can still build things around them, on them, and it really leaves kind of a variety of options for us as things develop. Hello, Laura. It's 103 here. We're going to get hotter out here, I think in this next week, Laura, after it was kind of cooling down for a little bit there, which is a good thing with all the things like fires going on. If anyone's in the southeast, I hope everything's going okay for you guys with the hurricanes and flooding and all that type of thing. Crazy weather patterns. Doing good. I didn't get to scuba dive here. The weather and currents were too bad. Oh, that's too bad, Debbie. Yeah. Boy, that's something that I always wish I did more of after I was certified. I never got out. I was certified. I took a scuba diving in college and got certified, but I rarely made it out. I think I went out like twice or something like that, but that's one of those things that I thought, oh, man, that would be really cool to be able to do more often. I always loved the kind of the whole feeling of that. But that's too bad, yeah. All right, let's see. I can have more of these rocks coming around in this area, but I think I'm going to use one of the Mystic stamps right here. Coming in right here, I think. And that'll kind of curve things around a little bit. And I think the scale of this one is just fine for the location of this. This is bad news. I think my black Marvy pad is disintegrating. I might have, I don't know if I have others. I might have others. But all those little crumbs right there, I don't know if you can see them. It's all the foam kind of disintegrating on here. All right, let's see. Let's go about right here. I have this tree right here kind of going up into the lower portion of this stamp right here. So this tree kind of going up into that area, it kind of remedies the need for adding kind of a continuous shoreline from right over there, you know, for the whole, whatever, remaining length where that shoreline ended, which is right here. So there's a few inches of shoreline that I don't have to do anymore because I just covered it up with something else. So that's always one of those things in scenic stamps. See, like right here, I don't really need a shoreline over there anymore. It's just like this 1-inch little portion. I can just put in some rock textures or something like that, and that'll take care of that whole area in there, or that line that, you know, could have been needed otherwise. All right, let me see here. This seems like a good stamp right here for the, I don't know, whatever this combination of stamps that we're using right here. Another thing where I could have colored in those leaves up there, because I'm just going to utilize the acrylic paint pens to add in my colors up there. And then again, I think that's just going to save some time, because coloring with the paint pens will just be, I don't know if it's fast work, but it, you know, it's reasonably expedient of a quick, you know, of a process. Okay, this one I have coming up right behind those rocks, or it could be a continuous rock that has the trees kind of growing out of it, shoreline. These are dye-based inks on semi-gloss cardstock, by the way. All right, so see, we're kind of getting this built in here. It looks like a little cove right in there, and of course those are where the fish always are. Maybe. Let's do this too. See these two trees right here? Let's replicate that tree, just the tree portion, right down in this area right here. So it's like we'll have two over here and one over here. It's kind of a good, whatever, compositional balance or something. Okay, so this is our masking. I won't say never, but I rarely do kind of more complex forms of masking, because I want things to integrate and overlap anyway, so doing really careful masks, unless it's around like I do have a couple structures that are very straight on the top portions, and that's when, you know, a cutout would be good to use, like the Light Rocks and Waves. It's a lighthouse stamp. If I have some clouds or something like that behind there, you know, I might cut out something really specific. But otherwise, it's soft, kind of jagged masks right in here. And see right in here, if some of that tree overlaps down in the rocks, it's not really any big deal. So we don't need to do, you know, anything with, you know, a lot of whatever, more complexity, you know what I mean? But I don't know. This is like really easy to do though. So just torn paper towels most of the time. Okay, but see how that kind of balances off things a little bit more over here. So there's like this over here. These two things are kind of I mean, this isn't a dominant subject matter, but the visual weight is a little bit more kind of balanced off now too. Okay, let's see here. Let's see if I'm going to do this in here. I was thinking about this stamp right here. It'd be nice to have an Art Foamies version of this stamp. The Art Foamies, if there was an Art Foamies version, which is a rubber stamp on foam, like these ones right here. This is like the larger version of this right here, the tree trunk. But these Art Foamies, they're just so easy to stamp out for the impressions, okay? They don't hold as much detail, though, as rubber does, okay? I don't know what you lose. You lose half of the detail, probably. But they're just so much easier to stamp out, which would be good for anything over a certain size of stamp. And the ease of stamping is because, you know, foam contours to your papers so much easier. All right, I'm inking this up, just making sure it's inked up all the way. It's a really big stamp. Okay, let's see here. Hold your breath. I'm joking. Let's see, let's do this right in here. Let's stamp it kind of a little bit more over this way. All right, so I think I'm going to just wipe off this top portion right here so that doesn't stamp out where it's going to overlap that instead of putting a mask down here. And that's because this is just so big. Pardon my head if it gets in the way here. It's just such a big stamp. I don't like to put masks underneath it because there's so much surface area. There's so much surface area that I like to have things as even as possible, not stamping over, you know, even a thin paper towel or something like that. Okay, is that straight? I think it is. I'm lining it up with the top and the bottom just visually. All right, looks like I'm going for about, I'm probably stamping out, I don't know, what is that, 2/3 maybe? Maybe a little bit over 2/3, 3/5, maybe. And see how it's like a CPR stamp, you know, you kind of, to get full coverage, you kind of work it from edge to edge. And I do have a lot of paper underneath this for cushioning. Okay. So we have that right there. Now see, I wiped off some of that top portion right in there because I don't want this line going across in there, but that's something that I'll just add in later on with some masking and coloring in there. All right, so anyway, that is that. We have these open areas in here that need to really be filled in. So we'll fill it in with some additional texture. And I think this would be a good spot for like a figure stamped in here. So I'm not going to texturize this too much. But let's go ahead and add in a little bit of texture right now, just so we can kind of get the gist of how, whatever, gracefully this will kind of merge in with the background. I'm tempted to add in some additional rocks right in here, but I think that would interfere with the silhouette of this tree right here, so I don't think I'm going to do too much of that if I do it. I'm talking about like rocks like this, like the smaller version of the boulders with lichen. All right, so this is the Tiny Rock Small, which is right up there with one of my favorite stamps these days, or maybe over the last few years probably. It just incorporates everything in really nicely. And I'm using it more as like a, or I'm not more as, but I'm using it as kind of like a toning device as well. So by going in repetition, right in here, like that, I can kind of merge this image in with that foundational area, okay? And let's see, let's add some right over here at the water's edge. Debbie, do you, if Debbie's still on, Debbie, do you do, what kind of diving do you do? Do you do all sorts? Do you ever do shore dives, or is it all off of boats, or what do you do? Just all of the above type of thing? Because if you do a shore dive right here, yeah, I should use my little scuba diver right here. I haven't used that in a while. Yeah, if you do a shore dive right here, it's right out here. It's you got 40 feet of visibility. So that's what they're always talking about with the diving. If people don't dive here, you know, they're talking about visibility, and it's, you know, how clear the the body of water, you know, is when you get down there. So usually higher visibility, the better the dive, right? All right, so let's see here. Okay, so I have this area out here, this far shore, and let's do this right here. Let's create a little bit more of a cove. Or wait a minute. Let me see if I have some of my island. Yeah, I happen to have one right here. I thought about adding another slight bit of like tree coming right over here just to make this, but that would be a real kind of narrow area for a cove right in here. So I just want to kind of balance this off a little bit more. Although just a little bit might be kind of good. Just like a little tiny bit right over here, maybe. This is where I tend to refer to this as like dissecting an image. It's not really dissecting, it's just using a portion of it. But I'm just going to use about at most maybe about an inch. I don't think it's going to be that much though. I'll just use a small portion of this stamp right here. It's probably 3/4 an inch. You can always do that too if you want extra trees, just, if you don't want a cabin again or something like that. If you wanted extra trees up here, then you just stamp those portions of it up there. Don't ink up this bottom portion. Okay, let's see right here. I've got this other stamp on there, so I can't really see through there very well. All right, it's just a little tiny bit right there. Okay, so it just kind of closes it off a little bit. It was a little bit too open right there for my taste. And then, see that right there? Let's anchor that down again with some additional tone, or texture, I guess. Texture being used as tone, like this. By the way, I added some texture on here, but you can see it's still kind of open in the middle there. There's a lot of shoreline right here. Working on these larger pieces of paper that really leaves you kind of a lot of space to add in some things. I'm thinking about these, the stamp called Running Kids. One of the kids has their hands over their head, like they're kind of running on the beach or something like that. It's like they just got there and they ran out in the sand or something like that. But there's a spot right here for them. I can put someone like right on this ledge here, overlooking the scene too, and I think that would be good. But, okay, let's see here. This could either be like open ocean, and we can have like sky up here. We can put some clouds. We can put like a distant shoreline right in there. Mountains or something like that. There's a lot of possibilities right here, or in this composition that we can go with. This one right here. So this is kind of like supposed to be kind of equal distance because the trees are both the same size. But this one, see, the trees are kind of smaller, and I can add something like this, and it can represent something farther back in the distance. And it also, if I just put a straight piece of paper right here and just stamp this down here, that will kind of add that horizon line, straight horizon line back into the mix without really doing anything else. So yeah, I'd imagine that humidity, huh, Patty? Although Michigan gets pretty hot during the summer too, doesn't it? Nothing like Florida, though, if you're used to that. Okay, let's do this right here. I think I'm going to add this in the background. So it's like we stamp this first, and we're kind of like wrapping the composition around it like that. Now we're working like backwards from that one. So it's going to be representative of something in the distance. So it's like we're kind of creating this whole kind of enclosure right here. Okay, let's see. I think that seaside cove went roughly right here. So I'm going to go a little bit higher, I think. Let me try to get this straight here. I'm just kind of lining up this edge right with the paper. Let's go a little bit higher than that. And I don't want this full thing. I think I want it like cut off right in here. Just so that it, I don't know, it looks a little bit more distant, I think. You know, the farther away, kind of the little variations right here won't be as prominent. Little tweaks. I don't know if it really makes a difference. But see, I stamped it a little bit higher up, so it's a little bit farther off in the distance. That's kind of the, whatever they call it, Western perspective. Okay. The higher up it is, the farther back it represents. All right, let's do that again here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go a little bit higher up like this so that there's going to be another impression of this stamp right back in here. Let's mask off this tree here like that. You don't need to mask off those dark ones. And then we'll go like this right back in here. Okay. And we need some of these deciduous trees right back in there. It's too evergreeny. Evergreeny. Let me see if I can find my smaller tree cluster stamp. I have a wood-mounted version of it, but it's also in nature set number 10. That is. So it's just it's a smaller version of tree cluster, large, like this. And see, these ones are a little bit smaller. And I'm going to put some right back in here just to kind of fill out that this scenario. So there's supposed to be, this is like the shoreline back here, so this is like this cove that opens up in here. That's what that represents. We kind of close things off a little bit in here. It could be a lake too. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to transition this a little bit. I'm wiping off some ink off the bottom. Pretty good. And then I'm going a little bit less ink off right in the middle. So it's going from dry to kind of a little bit moist and then wet up top, you know. And that when I stamp it over these trees right here, it won't just be a solid black version of that tree. Hopefully it transitions from dark to light so we can still see the silhouette of those trees in there, you know, the shape of it. Like that. See, it's kind of like diffused down there. So you just remove some of the ink after you ink it up like that. Just go kind of heavy removal. And then as you move up there, just use less pressure. So I'm wiping off pretty good. Sometimes I don't remove enough, and it's because my ink pad is just so wet or something like that. So it's like, oh, I didn't remove enough of it. But you see that kind of mist behind there? And it kind of puts this little like hazy mist and atmosphere behind, or in between your layers of imagery. And that creates distance just inherently in the impressions themselves, okay? So it's just like doing less stamping less, less of the imagery. You can do this with anything. You can do it with word stamps or anything like that, wipe off the bottom of a word stamp, a little bit so it looks like it's bottom lit, or do the top of it, or whatever, a 3/4. And it looks like lighting is hitting it a little bit. All right. All right, so let's go with that right there, and by the way, this isn't going to be a spooky, it's not going to be a spooky Stampscapes. We've been on that theme. Let's go with the rocky peak in the background. All right, same thing. I'll wipe off the bottom portion like this. I'm wiping it off pretty good, where it's like almost like I'm asking myself, did I remove all the ink? Okay, which I don't think I did. So I'm transitioning about midway up or so. And then we'll go with this mountain back here. It's like a little peekaboo view of the mountain. So, see that? How it transitions? It's darker up top and lighter down below, because if it was this dark right in this area, we wouldn't be able to see the silhouette of that whatever top of the tree line quite as easily. Okay, let's do this too. Let's just get in some of these shapes in the background. Let me see if I can get a second impression. It'll be a much lighter impression, and I'm thinking about having some other imagery and tone over here anyway, but let's just see if we can get some extra texture back in here like that. So see that mountain in the background looks even farther back because it's lighter like that, and let's just get going for another impression like that. All right, so I think we have a pretty decent composition right here, kind of a structure to start building in. There's other things that we'll add in terms of impressions to this scene, but I think we can just start coloring it right now. Yeah, that's a it's a pretty big it's a pretty big scene for a lot of color. I've been doing these larger scenes kind of more monochromatic because it's like Halloween and we, kind of doing something a little more dreary. But this one right here, I want to have different tones in the trees, real bright. We might be breaking this one up into a couple different live streams here. It's like, hey, Kevin, I can't sit through and watch this. I'll make it like a 2-minute intro video. Black and Prussian blue pads are doing that. Yeah. The Prussian blue, Laura, is like I'm convinced that that's the chemistry of that one is like different. That one and the, I think it was bubblegum pink, the 67 or something like that. By the way, I'm adding in some more of these tiny rocks at the base of those two pine islands right here. Okay. Right down in here, and that kind of finishes off those areas a little bit more and transitions it a little bit easier. Let's see. Yeah, this one's probably going to have, this one's probably had it. It might be time for a new black pad for me. A new favorite black pad. My favorite just happens to be the one, whatever I'm using at the time, right? Or it's good to think of those things that way, at least. I'm looking at this in the background. I might add in some, like a blue sky or something like that in the background, just with some clouds like this. Maybe I'll have it coming from above like this. Maybe I'll have some streaming rays of light running across this. That might be pretty dramatic. Let's do that right here. Let's just go with, I I only have like a really small, that is a really small area for some clouds, okay? If there was a bigger area, I might do it in a lighter tone, but let's just go for like a medium tone blue. Like a Memento, it might be a Danube blue or Bahama blue, something like that. Middle value, use any brand you want, okay? All right, wiping off the edges right here. Okay, I'm gonna have like this light streaming in here, okay? So, let's see, let's mask off this mountain peak right here. And I'm facing this cloud. This cloud is being top lit right here. So if the lighting is coming from below it, you do it this way where it's, you know, the lighting is coming from below, okay? So if you have this in an unmounted version, maybe put an arrow on the back of your piece of rubber to point which direction you want your lighting to appear like it's coming from, you know, from a kind of a directional cue here. So see that right there? And I wiped off that portion right there, and I'll put another cloud right over here, and I'll fill in this area up here. I'm going to go over my mountaintops a little bit because the mountains are going to be filled in with color anyway. But I don't want to have like cloud going all the way down in here. That's why I masked off. Okay, now so I'll have the cloud coming right here. I'm going to have that lighting coming in from right there. And let me just go for a second impression. All right, so it's just really a barely kind of visible opening right there, but I'll have some light streaming across like this. We'll see how, you know, how this develops, you know, if I add in those crepuscular rays kind of with some pigment ink later on, but I think it'll be pretty dramatic if we do something like that. All right, it looks kind of out of place because that's the only thing that's in color right now, and it's looking fairly heavy when everything else is just anemic and white. But that'll all get blended in from a whatever intensity, continuity standpoint, okay? We'll have other brighter tones in here, so that super bright blue right now isn't gonna stand out like it is now. Meet KP with Art Foamies here in Australia. Oh, I did see KP's posts, photos from Australia. But she, aren't they in Japan now or something? I was following her, her travels there. All right, let's see. Let's do some peach Bellini, I think, as a foundation in here. Just a nice warm tone again, like I've been doing in these other pieces. All right, so just a light warm tone. I thought about going with the gray in here, but I think it'll be good to have a little bit of warmth as a base coat foundation in here. Boat dives, but shore dives if available. Okay. One thing about those shore dives is, man, if you have like any kind of walk or something like that, like when I was taking classes, we had to walk down this like cliff area. You know, it was on a walkway, but man, that stuff was so heavy. You know, walking from the parking lot down to the shore. It was like, oh my God. All right, this is kind of an orangish tone. It's a little bit more orangish than I'd probably, you know, want ideally, but we'll utilize some grays over the top of it to kind of knock it back a little bit. I'm kind of tapping and wiping too, just to get the gist of, you know, how wet my impressions are still. I don't want to like drag across there and it's like, oh, I'm dragging up this big smeary, you know, application of this color. You can see it's picking up some of that black a little bit right here. So I'll be a little bit careful. I can probably spray seal the place with a spray fixative and apply tones in there because the spray fixative is a little bit porous still. But I don't know. I haven't tried that technique before. You know, to spray seal with that spray fixative and to try to tone over it with wet media. I don't know if it would resist it or if it would seal it off too much, but that being said, you know, I mean, if you're worried about kind of smearing anything, then just don't drag it where it would smear. Just tap like this and just get a nice light application of color. You might be kind of dragging it along a little bit because it's probably picking up a little bit of the tone on here, and then you're tapping it, but you're not putting the streak in there, okay? That being said, this is a body of water right here, and if you do want to take advantage of kind of that streaking, that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to kind of your areas where you might want to get this kind of horizontal, kind of whatever, striations in there. Skies and bodies of water, it tends to look pretty good. So if you get a little bit of a streaky kind of gray across in there, yeah, it could add to the whole, whatever, spirit of that area and the lighting that's being cast on it. So in other words, I'm leaving some of these, putting some of these streaks in here, and I'll oscillate applications of it and then just some of the white of the paper like that. So it looks like it's, you know, kind of reflecting some light in there. All right. So with this first color, you're kind of establishing, you know, to some degree, kind of your, you know, what might be kind of your lighting choices for your piece, okay? So I'm going over here and it's not like super formulated. Sometimes I just start kind of adding some of this down. It's like, okay, that area in there was left a little bit light. So that's the area that's going to be light, you know? Or if some of these areas I think, maybe I should have left that a little bit lighter, then I just won't touch it too much with the additional tones that I add on there, and I'll avoid it. So there's all kinds of, you know, when you're starting off with a color that's so light in value, there's all kinds of other kind of lighting choices that you can still change, you know, as you work through the process. Okay, I'm going to add some of this up here in my sky, like this. I haven't had to re-ink at all this one application. So we're getting all this coverage in here. That's why it's really kind of beneficial to start off with your base coat, you know, with a re-inker fluid if you have it. I didn't do that for years, but I don't know, at some point in time after working from a pad and tapping, going, tapping, going, tapping, you know what I mean? After like 20 years, I figured it out. Just use a re-inker, and then, you know, you have plenty of ink in this, and then, yeah, it makes everything so much easier. And you're getting a really good saturation of that tone on the paper. It's not just coloring it, but it's kind of absorbing into the paper, into the pulp of the paper, which makes the next colors that we build up on here so much easier to apply because the page is a little bit moist, so it's easier to blend in, you know, the whatever incrementally darker colors in a light to dark process, okay? Sometimes when people get to their darker colors, they have a harder time kind of blending those ones. And sometimes they want to expedite it. They want to get to those darker tones really fast, which you can do, but you just have to use a little bit more touch and technique and finesse to get them to blend on the paper. Whereas if you kind of work through lighter tones like this and getting the paper a little bit kind of moist, you know. It just makes the blending so much easier because it's easier to blend wet into moist than it is wet into dry, where the paper's like really grabbing the ink really fast. Okay. All right, I know I say this stuff all the time. I was saying to myself, man, people are getting sick of hearing the same thing for the 1,000th time. But I don't know. In my mind, it's like, you know, someone could be watching one of these videos for the first time. So it's in this process right here. This is the thing that occurred to me when I was teaching classes years ago, is that, you know, people are really experienced at doing coloring, okay? But so sometimes when they just get a thin layer of it down, let's say 5 minutes ago on this page, okay, I had pretty much the same coverage, but I'm going for a little bit more saturation now. That's what people aren't used to doing. They're not used to going for saturations. Okay, so it's like one person asked me one time. They said, okay, so you're kind of lubricating the page a little bit with that first color, and it's like, yeah, that's, you know, a pretty good way to think about it. So I don't know if you can see, but this is semi-gloss cardstock. You can see where it's a little bit shinier in these areas right here. That's because it's absorbed into the paper. It hasn't reached super saturation, but you know what I mean? It's kind of getting there towards, maybe the surface is super saturated, so it's kind of like we have some suspended moisture on here. And again, it'll just make it so much easier to blend in other colors right over the top of, you know, a moist surface like that. Because the surface won't accept the inks as fast. So, all right, let's move on to the next tone. And I happen to have London Fog, which is a gray tone. I don't know if I'll use too much of that this time. I've been using it for more of a dreary kind of a Halloween color schemes, but let's use some of this right here. Okay, I didn't use as much in there because this is going to be more for the shadow areas, okay? See, it's quite a bit darker, okay? But see this right here, it just really blends out like that. Okay. Actually, it looks pretty good, I think, over the top of that first tone. That's really kind of manipulating our lighting scheme quite a bit, isn't it? Memento Black, mostly since the Marvy one. Do you like that Memento Black? Obviously you do, Laura. I don't know I don't think I have a Memento Black. Is that Memento? All the other colors of Memento, it wouldn't have been my choice, but like I said, I haven't even used it before, but I always felt that the Memento colors were always a little bit lighter than kind of what their covers, you know, the indexing would suggest. So, like this Danube blue right here, maybe in its fullest saturation you can get that, but most of the times I find that it's like 10% or 15% lighter than that. But the black, though, you like it, though, in terms of its darkness then. Hello, Sharita. It's very heavy to walk with dive. Yeah, the dive gear, the tank, and the weights. Yeah, it was killing me. And then we're walking in that, I don't know, whatever, I don't know what thickness, how many mil wetsuit you have, but yeah. All that gear. It's like more awkward than walking around with like a, you know, like backpacking gear. I like watching some diving videos. Kind of the more kind of extreme ones. I was watching, what do they call it? Those blue hole ones. And then there was another one. I don't know if it wasn't in Greece or something like that. It's like the most dangerous, I don't know, whatever diving site on Earth, just based on the, you know, the casualties there, the people getting lost down there. I forget where it was, but I was just watching that fairly recently. All right, here's aqua, which is a blue tone, of course. Let's try that out right here. Hello, Bill. Yeah, I came on earlier with this one. I figured a weekend right here. Weekdays I don't. Yeah, I'm doing other stuff during the daytime sometime, but this one right here, hitting it a little bit early because I figured I want to make some headway with this one. I didn't know how far I'd get. But here's a little tinting of some of this blue right in here, okay? I'm going to have to designate this area as more blue later on. I'm working on the semi-gloss so that I can use the colored pencils in here too, because I like going into these areas of the seaside cove to differentiate like the swells and the you know, like the lips of these little waves right here a little bit more by going in with some darker tones underneath it. Like I'll try to do that right here. So I like to get these little streaks, but anyways, a colored pencil gets in there really easily. As does, you know, something like a, you know, alcohol marker too. I'll explain all this when I get to it, folks, but I'm basically saying I want this kind of area of water to be varied. Some people are saying, hey, that's water right there that just joined in. Yeah, that's a seaside cove. It's kind of light in tone right here, but it's going to be kind of defined a lot more as I get through some of these darker colors to come. All right, so that was aqua. Let's go back to this color right here. This one's right here. A lot of people don't have Marvy tones. I'll work through a couple of these mementos right here. I don't know if it's like automatic spell check or something like that, but every time someone sends they use memento, it always has momento on it. So I've often thought, I don't know, is that some kind of thing that's changing that, or do people think it's memento inks? No big deal, but you know, I know what people are talking about. But I noticed that with it's like half the time people are kind of describing the inks they use. It's momento. All right, so see, that's a little bit of a deeper blue right there, but we're retaining the lightness of the crest of the wave right in here. It's a little bit brighter right back in here. This memento it's not a really bright colored ink, okay? But I do like mementos, their blending kind of capabilities. They blend really nicely because they're really thick. On the other hand, sometimes I want to get darker with something after I've done several layers, and it gets so thick with ink, it's hard to apply them because the paper's not accepting any more ink on top of it because it's really super saturated. So what you do is you can wait for it to dry a little bit. You can heat set it a little bit if you want to expedite the process. But they're really great to work with, and they're supposed to be fade resistant. Now, in my experience with art material, like oil painting and watercolors and things like that, I don't know if it's true, but you know, back when I was a student, looking at the light fastness rating, meaning you know, how prone is something to fade with usually light exposure. It seemed like the brighter the tones, when I just looked at a certain color and I looked at the light fastness rating, it seemed like the brighter it is, the faster it, or the less light fast it is. So it's just more prone to fading. So you know, with the Memento inks, I don't find them to be really very bright. They're kind of on the duller side to me. Okay, that's after using Marvy for so long. I don't mind to say that they're dull inks, but they're, you know, in comparison to Marvy. So anyways, that might, you know, account for them being a little bit more light fast, is that they just don't start off, you know, like super bright to begin with, maybe. I don't know. All right, but see there in there, kind of adding in, it looks a little bit more watery, you know, like that. If it's a sunset time or something like that, I wouldn't do the water blue. It'd be like, I don't know, warm tones reflecting what colors you have going on in the sky. Just finished making a kettle of soup. I started 42 minutes ago. I don't know, maybe, Bill, I made you mad and you unsubscribed is the reason why. Or you might have got scared, you know, with all the latest like Halloween stuff is all, you know, that's what I was thinking of maybe. And you subconsciously unsubscribed. Or you did some sleepwalking, you know. As a protective measure. Hello, Megan. It plays well with alcohol markers. Oh, okay. Uno momento. Yeah. When I was really surprised, though, at when Mementos first came out, I was thinking, wow, if they are truly light fast, that would be pretty amazing for us stampers. Because I don't know if you ever been to anyone's house where it's like they have like an original card from either us or someone else that's been sitting on the fridge for a long time, and you can see the intensity of a lot of the inks, or the value of them. They might have gotten a lot. They're duller and lighter if they've been exposed for a really long time. You know, than what they look like when we, you know, after we've stamped it or whatever. But you can see them fading over time. Yeah, I mean, which is a good thing. If someone has a piece up for so long of ours, you know, it's a good thing, I guess. But that fading aspect of them, you know, isn't, you know, so great. So the Mementos, when they first came out, I thought, wow, that would be really something in terms of whatever, intensity and value, longevity, value in terms of light and dark. Okay, so here comes some brown. I'm going to wipe some of it off, so I'm just applying the lighter version of it. Okay. I'm just kind of getting the gist of my whatever color scheme down right now. Or in these, I don't know, I still consider these to be kind of, they're not really the base coats. I guess I've kind of gone beyond that, but I'm still looking at it as that a little bit, because I still want to influence kind of the overall color scheme here. And the colors are kind of light enough in some areas where I can kind of still tweak them a little bit if I want to take them in a certain direction. But they're all kind of dreary right now. But again, we'll add in some other colors to come. Let's put some of these maybe on some of these rocks, maybe like this. It kind of warms everything up a little bit, like that. Right down in this area, we'll put some of that on the far shore, about like so. Let's bring in a little bit more warmth here. Let's go with the peeled paint right here. A little bit of green. I don't know what happened with that notification then, Bill, but I want, you didn't miss anything. But glad to have you as always, Bill. All right, there's some green right along in there. Kind of has that aged looking green. I'm putting some in right here. Some of these rocks have, they're covered in lichen and like all those nice bright colors. Some of those areas along the shoreline up in Maine, they have so many different bright colors, as do, like, I don't know, different lichen colored rocks wherever, but I don't know, those mosses and stuff like that. I was looking at some photos of some I don't know, whatever shoreline areas out in Maine. It's like, some of that mossy area, those colors on the mosses, they're almost as bright as like the trees, like in full color. It's really amazing. So it's like, okay, I need to remember that when I'm stamping something out. All right, so there's the first kind of tone of green. That's kind of waking things up a little bit, I think. Let's bring some of that into our trees, our evergreen ones, maybe a little bit like that. It might look a little weird, but we'll alter it though when we get to the colored pencils and the acrylic paint pens, stuff like that. There's some deciduous trees kind of interspersed amongst the evergreens here. So let's see. All right, that green's starting to wake things up, I think. It's a little bit happier, isn't it? All right. Okay, so distress inks are typically designed to be a little bit more on the aged, weathered side, okay? So let's try out a little bit of a brighter tones here. We'll go with we'll stick with our dye-based inks right here. I've got a desk full of haunted card scenarios here. Let me get those out of the way. We need some space to work here. All right. Scenes from the last, I don't know, whatever, month or two of live streams. All right. I just keep altering this. There was my peach Bellini. There's my greens right here. Here's some other color scheme right there. It's like, okay, there's my bright green right here. So we're changing up right here, going with kind of a brighter tone. You can wipe some of it off to make it a little bit less kind of extreme, so that when you add it in there like this, you're going to know a lighter version of it, a little bit more control over how much is being applied. See, it's kind of quite a bit warmer like that. Now remember, this is a light green, so if I put light green over a darker area, it's not going to make that area lighter. Okay, it'll make it probably more intense, but it's not going to make it lighter because dye-based inks are transparent. So you can make it brighter, but it's not going to be lighter. All right, so see, that's kind of warming it up right in there. It looks really mossy green. Like that. Okay. Let's stop right there with the green. This one's really, really kind of hot of a green color. Yeah, not quite yet. All right, let's see here. All right, so what's going through in my mind as I've been building up these tones is, when do I want to go in here with the alcohol markers? Because once I use the alcohol markers in certain areas, the dye-based inks don't apply on top of the applied alcohol very well. So I want to get most of my dye-based ink applications done before alcohol and colored pencil, colored pencils are employed. So it might be the time to do that now. I think I have kind of the big foundation of tones applied in there. I mean, someone could stop right there and, that's their scene, but if you have, and a lot of us do have, alcohol markers, we have colored pencils, stuff like that. Those are really helpful to add a lot of detailing into our pieces. And as long as you use them, in kind of roughly a compatible sequence, they'll work just fine. So in other words, you put your dye-based inks down, and now I'm going to put the alcohol inks down. I mean, you can put, colored pencils and go with a little bit of alcohol over the top of it too. But generally the dye-based inks first. It's kind of like working in this kind of methodology that they do in certain types of oil painting, or watercolors, I guess, and acrylics, I guess. I just haven't, used acrylic. I haven't done acrylic painting before. I use acrylic pens, but, you kind of work from thin to thick. Okay, they call it, like, the last touches might be this thing called impasto, where it's kind of like a big, thick, like dollop of paint or something like that. You wouldn't put that first and then do these light washes over the top of it. It'll dissolve, that thick amount in there. But you can go with thin to thick. So these are like thin applications of color right here. What is this right here? Blue. Maybe you can't even tell with this one right here. If you're applying it and you can't see it, then just move on to the next tone. Or something darker. Sometimes I have to go, I start off with the lighter tones, then I work a little bit darker, and then I go back with a lighter one to kind of blend it in a little bit. On this paper, it's not super easy to blend in because it's an absorbent semi-gloss paper and not like a glossy or not a traditional, probably, like alcohol, alcohol users, favorite surface right here, but it's a little bit sealed off. I'm talking about like UPO papers or stuff like that, that's not going to be like this one. But on this one, I can use colored pencils because it's it has a little bit of a texture to a tooth to it. All right, so see these little marks I'm putting in here like that? I'm doing this type of thing where I add it like that, and I'm kind of transitioning it like that. So I'm trying to go with just barely like touching it like that, so I can get this kind of this transitioning mark like that. Okay, so it's like I'm going in here in the kind of darker area. Then when I move out that way, like that, I try to do kind of like a gestural mark right here. It's a little darker right here, and I'm kind of flicking it off like that. As opposed to kind of like this, okay? So, kind of, practice your flicking. All right, let's see this one right here. Here's a little bit of a brighter one. Remember, in your shadow areas of your pieces, sometimes your shadows are a really good opportunity for some bright colors. Your shadow areas can be, the brightest areas in a given area. So in this area of blue, the shadow areas are a little bit more bright in terms of color intensity. So it's a good place to add in some brightness in there, like that, and to make those areas nice and rich, like about like so, and see that bluish tone in there. It's kind of coming to life a little bit more. In these mountain areas up there, let's hit those areas with a little bit of tone. So the lighting is coming from over here. But in the design itself, there's some darker areas, and I'm just going in here with the color that's just a little bit darker than the colors that are already applied. And I'm just kind of reiterating the darker areas on the design and just making them a little bit darker. Not with black, but it's like a medium tone gray, like that. So see, it makes these mountains look like they have a little bit more volume to them and mass by coloring them in that way. Okay, we have these grasses right back in here. They're all kind of uniformly colored. We see some light and shadow in here because that's in the design itself, so we can go in and just reiterate that. Let's see. Here's kind of a brighter green and a kind of an olive green. Let's bring some of that brightness in there. So I'm still kind of flicking it like this because I don't want to do it like a full amount, just in case I don't like it. If I do a light amount like that, it's not going to be as prominent, so I can kind of adjust accordingly. It actually looks pretty good in there, I think, with that greenish tinge like that. I'm going to put a little grass right in here too, like amongst these rocks, like that, just to bring some of that brightness into other areas of the scene. Okay, it's just so it's like we have some of that green, same green up there. We can do a little bit right there, maybe. That, and a little bit of that olivey green. Hello, Susan. Yeah, let's go, and we'll have a stamp retreat right here, so everyone has their own cabin, and we'll stamp all day and night. And a breakfast buffet out overlooking this bay, outdoors, in perfect weather. Yeah, let's all go there. Here. I was telling people in the past that which did happen. We had these scenic stamping retreats, okay? And it's not like instruction or anything like that, but usually if people had something, new thing or whatever, technique or some kind of medium. Like Copic markers were pretty new, and people were using that airbrush thing. So when someone brought their airbrush setup, and we're doing it, people would gather around, or it's like, hey, and did anyone, if anyone wants to see whatever the Wink of Stella pens, you know what I mean, come on over. So it's like we'd stop working on whatever scenes we were doing and go over there and stand by. But anyways, what I'm getting at is like, we thought at one point in time, it's like, we should have it, kind of a scenic stamping retreat in some place really scenic, like Sedona or something like that. This is before like prices went up for everything. But after we just decided, hey, let's have it more centralized, we'll have it out in Illinois, so people coming from the East and Midwest and West, you know what I mean? It's a little bit more centralized, but then it was like, after a couple of those retreats, it's like, we don't need to have these retreats in someplace really scenic because we never leave the room. It's just we're all just stamping in some room somewhere, you know what I mean? It could be anywhere. We like check into the hotel. We were like eating, and a lot of times at the hotel. Sometimes we'd go out to eat, but a lot of times it was walking out somewhere. But yeah, it didn't matter. We were stamping our places, that we can go to, because we're kind of like whatever, subconsciously traveling to all areas of the globe. At the retreat with whatever we were stamping. So anyways, a little bit more gray here in that mountain. The mountain looks a little bit more developed now, huh? Even though it's kind of a little peekaboo, you can bring those gray tones into it. But see that stamp, wherever it is, right here, what I'm coloring is, you see where there's darker areas in this design? I'm coloring like right in here, right in here. This area is darker. So I'm just going in there and just reiterating that so it looks a little bit more full. You don't have to do it with just gray too. I was doing it with a little, you can do it with a little blues or gray tones or something like that. So you're kind of like, you're getting your shadows richer, okay? So that's one of those things. Sometimes shadow work, people don't have to address it, you know what I mean, to come up with really good scenes, but that's one of my little tricks here. I spend time in my shadows like this. Okay, so here's these rocks right here. Okay, so see, I put a little bit of gray in between one rock and the next one like that. And this rock right here is just darker to begin with. So I do that within the designs. Then I create a little bit of shadow around it. And again, I draw my designs with shadows in them, so you don't have to add them in there. But that's one of those little types of things, that you can do to really kind of emphasize something. When you add your shadows, your light becomes more complex too, because you're adding in some form of contrast within the pieces too. So it's those, like I said, those can be some of the most some of the brightest colors. Shadow work isn't something that people are going to notice first, but it's more of a subtle thing. Things feel a little bit more kind of stable, okay? Because you're anchoring down your objects with little shadow work. Here I'm adding a little bit of like this. This is like a violet or something like that, like a violet blue, but see that right in there? So see what this does right around in these little areas. I mean, it could be any color too. It doesn't have to be this color. I'm testing it out here, but see this right here? I'm bringing this right along the shoreline, but see that right there? And you don't have to develop anything like, okay, wait, I don't know where I should add the shadows. You can just kind of follow the cues of the design itself and just darken the dark areas of the designs, okay? Now, right here, I'm kind of going along this water's edge a little bit more. Here, we'll come up into some of these little rocks right in here. See that? I don't know. Like this water's edge. Yeah, that's pretty prominent. See that little edge kind of coming around in here, and it goes right back in there. Let's see if there's any difference between this color and the colors that I've already laid down in here. Yeah, a little bit. Something like that. That probably needs to be blended out a little bit now because it's pretty dark. So I'm going to come in with my lighter blue and just kind of blend that out a little bit like this. Okay. Let's see that it feels a little bit different, you know, because again, when you add a little bit of darkness in one area, the lighter area next to it is one step lighter. This was all looking a little bit dreary in here before, but then when you add the darker tones, the brighter tones next to it, it makes those areas kind of, well, they used to call it in like art classes, you know, if you go a little bit darker right here, it makes that area right there pop, you know. It stands out more, okay? So like right in here in this shadow area, right in here, adding this down like this, okay? Blending it out a little bit, like about like so. Right there, so I went a little bit darker right there, and that makes that wave stand out a little bit lighter, okay? So you can play around with your shadow areas and adding in different tones into them, making them nice and rich from a tonal aspect. I'm just kind of blending. I'm trying to, I don't have this formula in my head of all these different types of things here. I'm just kind of playing around with, here's a little bit of a lighter kind of tan, testing it out right there. Test it out in a little area, and if I like it, I just kind of go more like that. I think that looks pretty good. It's kind of making that area glow a little bit more too with some additional. Let's test it on some of these rocks right here too. I think that looks pretty good. These rocks have a lot of tone in them, but they're a little bit anemic, I think, in comparison. So let's got that. Let's try it up on the mountain here. All right, this one did pretty well. I need that pot of coffee if we're stamping all night. Some people, they stamped. I think they pulled all-nighters. I didn't. But I was probably up till, I don't know. I don't remember the exact times, but yeah, definitely past midnight. And I don't know. It was like the next day. I think there were a couple people where it was like, did you guys go to sleep? You know, I don't know what it was based on. It might have been based on like their output. You know, it's like, wait a minute, you stamped all that, you know, after we went to bed. And I remember asking or wondering if some people went to bed at all. And I don't know. I think they didn't answer or someone didn't answer there. And it occurred to me that, yeah, they probably didn't go to sleep. All right, let's add in some fall tones. I don't know which direction I'm going, but let's start off with some yellow right here. I've always kind of wished I had kind of a duller yellow here. And this one's a little bit yellow-green-ish, I think. Let's see here. It's a little bit bright. But let me add in some of this right here. It's a little bit of a kind of a duller orange. And this, it's going to look, it might look a little bit shocking when we go into these brighter tones in here. But we're going to try to integrate it and make it look, you know, I don't know. I don't know if natural is the word, but we'll try to make it look not so kind of offensive in a intensity, from an intensity standpoint. Yeah, see, it's like all the alcohol ones I have in these sets, they're all kind of bright right here. Are these ones the exact same color? No, these ones aren't even the same color. It looks like they might as well be, though. All right, here comes some yellow right here. I'll kind of scumble it around in there a little bit. It's not, okay, it's not too bad. I like to build up to it so I have a little bit more control. It might end up being really super bright, but I just don't like to have it like just inherently with one pass, like full intensity. All right. Let's go like that. It's making it dark, but the acrylic paint pens will come in here and they will overlap and layer it a little bit more. And then the white that we use later on will also kind of mellow things out a little bit if need be. Okay. Sometimes when I look at fall foliage, you know, photography, especially with red tones, I'm thinking, in stamping, I'm being a little bit too conservative, you know. It's like, it might be like this red right here, like a big, huge, like forested, you know, tree line. And it's as like, you know, bright, whatever, Porsche red or something like that as can be. All right, but that's not too bad. Like that, I think. Okay, I'm not filling it in. I'm kind of, like I always mention, I'm kind of like scumbling like this. Not like going for like a full saturation of something, okay? It's kind of going like that, so I'm just kind of building it up a little bit. All right, that stands out pretty good. All right, let's try to merge in some orangish tinges at least here. I mean, you can have some that are, you know, orangish tones, you know, yellow fall foliage too. Whatever you feel like going with. Okay. All right, let's do that. Let's move into the orangish tinges on a couple of these. Assessing as I go along. All right, that looks okay. Let's go into, one of the things that occurred to me is I haven't even used any colored pencils in here. We'll see if it contributes to the piece in whatever areas, maybe some blues or something like that. Hello, Zale, how are you? All right, let's try some of this right here. This is a pretty bright blue right here. That looks pretty good. I don't know if you can see that. Does that look any different to you at all on your screens? It's a little bit brighter. And so the colored pencils are something that, you know, it's something that you can really have a lot of control over in terms of how much is applied, because you can apply a very, you know, light version of it, or you can apply a very dark version of it. For me, I'm trying to do like a varied application of it. So maybe, you know, some of my little transitioning streaks with the alcohol pen, were kind of clunky, so I can kind of blend it out a little bit more with the colored pencils. Okay. And then I'll blend it with, white pigment ink and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of, different things. Here's a really small kind of shadow area on this wave. I didn't hit it at all with the any other medium, so I can do it here with the colored pencil. So again, just darkening the dark areas of the impressions. Okay. All right. So that looks decent, I think. As far shoreline here a little bit, maybe. Some areas up in the sky. Let's try some of this brown here in the sandy areas. I'll kind of go a little bit more like at the base of this rock cluster. That kind of warmed up that shadow a little bit, didn't it? We'll do that on the far shoreline as well, maybe. What is this? Raw umber. It's kind of a warm neutral brown. You can see it where I used it right here and right here. Those two areas are a little bit brighter and a little bit more varied, with a little bit of different kind of value and temperature. See, I used it right here. That kind of warmed up that little area. It's kind of a little bit more of a spotlit area. I still think I might put something right here in the foreground. I'm not sure quite yet, but I'm gonna break up this streak a little bit. It looks like there's too much of like this sand area kind of going in here, so I'm just adding this blue right in here, right on the water's edge. That. All right, let's try some of the colored pencils in these trees as well. So, oh, okay. This I didn't think this would apply on top of the alcohol ink very well, but this particular scarlet red is really, it's one of those really soft, I guess, colors in the Prismaline. Some of them are a little bit harder, and they don't apply on top of, kind of a really smooth texture, and those alcohol inks leave a really smooth texture. But this seems to not be having any problem kind of going over it. All right. All right, so we have that. There's a little bit of orange tone. Kind of hitting it in the shadow areas of the branches. As these things get brighter right here, I'm looking at other areas, and as you get brighter and brighter, other areas I think can match that intensity a little bit more, so we can go with a little bit brighter green in some areas. It's a little bit brighter in the water there, so we can go with the, on our rocks here or something like that. You can kind of add a little bit more intensity, or you can add in kind of darker shadows, whatever shadow definition, I guess. It's kind of like bringing in, it's like slowly this piece gets a little bit more in focus, you know what I mean? I'm trying to do that kind of like an overall, rather than just like working on one little area and then working over here from start to finish. It's like kind of like bringing it all into focus, roughly the same rate in the different objects and areas. And a little bit more of a shoreline right back in here. This is black that I'm using right here. A little bit more shadow work around these rocks. All right, so there's a little bit more rock definition down here. It's a little bit more, it's a little bit more in focus, I think. Okay, so I'm gonna have that light coming in from over that way. So I'm kind of casting a little bit of a shadow in here. I'm just doing it with the black right here. Multiple tones might make it look a little bit richer, but let's just make it quick here. See, here's this rock out in the water right here. So I'm putting the shadow kind of going off to the right, off of those rocks right in there. So it's like one of those little subtle things, it's little detailed things that you can do or not. But see, all these little objects right in here are kind of casting a shadow this way. So it kind of anchors them down a little bit more. All right, we have that. All right. I'm wondering about my paint pens, if it's time. I think it might be time. All right, so a couple paint pens like this, yellows. I don't know if I'll use the red, maybe. Hello, Mark. Zale, good to see you. All right, shaking it up quite a bit. You can kind of manipulate these pens a little bit. If a color is like a little bit too bright, all right, you just don't shake it up as much, so it's kind of like a watery version of it, or a more watery version, all right, and it won't have the same intensity. I usually shake mine up for full intensity because, like, you can see, like, right here, there's a bright yellow and, like, a little bit more of a dull yellow. But you can kind of play around with things like that. Yeah, potentially, you know what I mean, if you really know your pens well. All right, let's try it right here. These are the 3mm paint pens. They're pretty good for really good coverage. You can use your extra fine paint pens too, and those work great. You might have to do a little bit more kind of texturing with them, just because they're, smaller tips. So if you want the same amount of like coverage that I'm getting right here, you just add a little bit more. It doesn't take a lot longer. We're talking about like a couple minutes or something like that. But I do like a little bit of variation in terms of size. Okay, now you see that right there on those leaves right here? I didn't do like this uniform application of it. There's some light and dark on these branches. Okay, so I'm kind of adding some on the top surfaces of branches. Okay, now if you can't see it, if you colored it in, it's all uniform. What I'm doing right here is like, okay, well, imagine this is the tree right here like this, okay? Here's the trunk right here. Okay, so it's like I'm adding in like highlights up here. Now this is like darker in here, okay? So it's like highlights on the tops of this. See, it's like on the top area of those different areas of the tree, okay? So that's what it kind of looks like this. So I don't know what you call it, the tufts or something like that, okay? So it's like adding it like here, right here, and then there's none right in here, and then I have some right in here, so that it looks nice and varied like that, okay? Now see this one right here, I'll do the same thing. I'll add some up here, none right here, here. You know what I mean? You just kind of oscillate it. Okay, so here I'll add some right up here. Oh yeah, this is where my light is going to be coming in, so maybe I'll add a little bit more on the, what is it, the right side of this tree. All right, so see that right there? Can you see like those different areas of the tree? So again, I just don't do it completely uniformly. Which, you know, from an application standpoint, it's less time than filling in the whole thing, okay? All right, now I'm looking at this right in here, these deciduous trees. I'm going to just kind of make up little deciduous trees in the background here. I'm going to say that there's like really distant trees right in here by putting in a little bit of yellow in between there like that. Otherwise, it's kind of like, I don't know, it seems like it's missing something back in the distance there. And I do have these trees in here, and they're more pine tree-ish, but I'm wondering if I can get a little bit of color on them. Let's see. Yeah, I'll do it on the, I mean, it's like a point of no return. I just added a bunch of paint on top of this, so it's there, but I'll kind of transition it a little bit more. So it's on the left-hand side of this, which is where I'm going to have the light coming in like that. It's like some, you know, some of those leaves are falling down on the, you know, the rocks below. And light will be coming in from here. So on this tree right here, this kind of more foreground tree that's in the darkness, I'll put some highlights. Same thing with this one right here. Just to bring a little bit more continuity, textural, color, etc., continuity into the piece. And like I said, I mean, if I'm taking my time, you know, the impressions would have had a little bit of color inherently in these trees, but I just didn't, you know, I just wanted to expedite the process, so I just stamped everything in black. Knowing that I have these pens that I can utilize later on, so you can see some of those highlights right here and here, okay? It's a little bit of a different tree, yeah, but, you know. As we say in scenic stamping, I don't care. All right, so we get that kind of coming together a little bit. That was the yellow. Well, that was just one paint pen, right? I don't think I used it anymore. Yeah, this composition right here is pretty fun, Zale. I've done like similar types before. This one's a little bit different than any that I've done in the past. I was kind of just basing it around what I had on my desk here. It's like, okay, I know what I kind of want to go for, a little bit of this cove, like, you know, an area where there would be a ton of fish, maybe. Like in these waters right here. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do this whole area, but it's like, at the last minute I thought, oh, I'm going to throw in one of these cabins into it, because that'll really kind of create a strong kind of focal point. By the way, I need to color that cabin, I forgot. Yeah, but I hope you like the composition. Earlier in this video, I really pointed out that the color schemes that were the kind of the base layer color schemes were looking a little bit kind of murky and kind of muddy in tone, not bright. And I haven't done these like where it's like full color, you know, in different objects. And it seems like it's been a little while. Okay, so, you know, when I was getting into it, it was like, okay, as long as I stick to kind of the process, it usually comes out. But this looks a lot brighter in here now. It surprisingly didn't, though, when I had all those kind of base layer colors in there, because everything was of all of the same value. So that like practically looks like, I don't know, some of these areas that I covered up with tone, they practically look like the white of the paper now because of all the contrast in there. All right, so this orange right here is really bringing these foreground ones to life, I think, you know, to me. I'm turning them from like a deciduous tree, and I mean an evergreen, into a deciduous, you know, these fall kind of colors on there, like that. Okay, all right, now this is a duller yellow. I don't know if I need it or not. Let's see. I don't know. Laura, are you still on here? Is there anything kind of interesting coming up from on a celestial standpoint? What was there? There was like a partial lunar eclipse, right? What, it was like 2 weeks ago or something like that. All right, a little bit more contrast in the foreground. Maybe that's a little bit too textural, but we'll take care of that. Actually, this looks pretty good. Okay, this is adding a little bit more contrast into my deciduous trees here. These paint pens go on lighter looking than what they will look like when they dry. I have no idea what's going on, why they do that, but they do. It kind of helps from a blending aspect in some ways, but sometimes if you get the contrast in there that you want, and then it's like it dries and it looks darker, it's like, okay, I got to go in with more, you know, tone and adjust. I don't know, the paint just gets a little bit more it moves towards transparency from a more opaque look to it. Okay, so one of the things that, from a textural standpoint, down in this area, to me, it needs like some little bit of shimmer in here. In this, you know, it's supposed to be like sand or dirt or something like that, but I want a little bit more lighting in there, so I'm adding in some of this tan color into the tan areas like this. And then we'll hit it with a little bit more of the like white in the lighter areas right in here. And I have some areas right back in here in the grassy areas where I just think that, you know, these types of huge pens will be a little bit too awkward. So I'll switch off to my extra fine paint pen right in here. So let's add in. So as I was mentioning with doing shadow work in these areas, like right around in these rocks or something like that, or shoreline, everywhere, okay? Same thing with the highlights. So let's add in a little highlights like this. So I guess, I hadn't really thought about it before, but I guess when you add in highlights to things, then the darker areas next to it might look a little bit, see how it's really bringing that to life right there? The darker things in that area probably seem a little bit darker because you're adding in something light next to it. I'm going to put some of this green too up in my trees. Just, you're not going to really see it. It's not like, be like, oh, there's some green up there and there's trees, but it just brings a little bit of that continuity again into the different areas of your piece. Okay, so right in here it gets a little muddy, so a little bit of brighter tones right in here. I guess it's warmer tones can look a little bit nicer from a textural standpoint. Same thing right in here. It doesn't stand out too much, but I'll hit it with the white paint pen. Okay, so that was the green. That area in there looks a little bit more, oh, I don't know, alive, I think. There's a comet which is low in the morning sky. Huh. Next month it'll be low in the evening sky. I think I heard about that one. If it's the same, I remember hearing something about some comet. Yeah, that you mention it. That's cool. Let me see here. We have not seen it yet. Hoping for next month. Laura, what's the name of that comet? I'm going to look that one up after. Okay. Lighter tone. Not quite white, but pretty light. A little bit of a warmth to it. Trees are looking a little bit more shimmery. Here's what I like to do too. And this is on the design itself, but there's this trunk in here, okay? And I like to go into that, and I like to bring out those trunks a little bit more and some of the branches within the tree. Sometimes I'm just kind of inventing that trunk too, where it might have got filled up and we can't see it anymore or something, but if we go up and kind of define those trunks a little bit more, like right through there. Do you see those trunks in there? I just did this little line up that, like that. I like to go from the bottom up like that too, to get that little streaky kind of ness to it. Or whatever, transitioning tone. And that's the same thing in here. Let's do this right here in these trunks right in here. Don't be afraid to turn your cards kind of in the direction in which making a mark is going to be the most conducive. So see, I illuminated those trunks right there. It doesn't look so much more three-dimensional that way. Comet Tsuchinchan. Huh. That's a tough pronunciation there. Thank you, Laura. All right. All right, so see these trees stand out quite a bit more, I think. I'm gonna put some trunks right back in here, even on these pine trees, I think. Oh, here's another tree right here. A deciduous one. All right, so do that right in there. Do you see all these trunks in here? And it has that kind of a lighter, kind of structural base. It makes them stand out a little bit more. It can get really murky in here where, all that color has been added. Now we don't want to, it'd be a hassle to work around like a little tiny trunk like that with all of our color, especially if our dye-based inks, alcohol inks, colored pencil or something like that. So you just kind of fill it in and just take your paint pen and just redefine it later on just with one stroke, and that saves a lot of time from kind of avoiding something. So sometimes you just kind of color it in knowing that you can just kind of redefine it later on. All right, so here is the white. This is going to be the lightest color that we'll use on here. Because you can't really get lighter than that. You can go into something like, I experimented a little bit before, but I need to get back to it. But a way to go even lighter than white, sometimes it's like if you use reflectives like glitters or something like that are really going to be reflecting light, and they're kind of fun to use. Kind of experimented around with it a little bit on fall foliage before, where it's like you change the angle of it and it's really kind of twinkling with light, or sparkling, I guess. And that's something I don't know, I need to play around with more. A lot of the glitters these days that I was finding online, I couldn't find like just I maybe in the size that I was just looking at, or the chunky one or something like that, but it seemed like everything was like holographic in tone. So I couldn't find like just straight yellow or orange or something like that. I mean, I'm sure it's got to be out there, but kind of an initial whatever glitter shopping hunting. I don't know. I was surprised at the offerings out there. Okay, I'm adding a little bit more of this white and some of these trunks in here, because that one color did dry darker, dulled down a little bit. So here I'm kind of adding kind of light and dark right up and down the trunk instead of like all in one area. I'll vary it a little bit with the white. See what that looks like. Okay, down in this grassy area too, I'll add in some of those highlights. And there's some rocks down in here too. And I'll add in some highlights on the tops of some of those, okay? So remember how we added the shadows at the base of some of these rocks, or on the side. Now you can go back in, you can add in like a highlight on top, and it makes them look a little bit more dimensional that way. Stands to reason if they're casting a shadow, then lighting would be hitting them, in a certain way. And this is a way to go back in and add kind of a crisp element back into an area, an object that might have been, applied heavily with, different media. So it might kind of make it look a little bit softer. So a couple little highlights on top kind of reintroduces that crispness that you want in your scene. So it's really bringing this one to life right here. I'm adding this highlighting on the tops of the rocks. I think my pen's going a little bit dry, but see this rock right in here? See the difference between this one and this one? One has a little bit of highlighting on there, so it's a little bit crisper and dimensional looking, sparkly. Here we go. It's like really reflecting a lot more light right there. Boy, that really added a lot to that one. And put some up on the branches as well. The thing that I want, I wish we had more of, was those crazy northern lights that hit, what was it, June, was it? I mean, people were like posting on Facebook, like northern lights from their, from their driveway, like California or something like that. All right, hitting some of these rocks in the foreground. Some highlights. If it's a real small rock, I'm kind of adding like a little line to it, but if it's like a large one, I don't want to do like this big line like that, so I'm kind of just adding kind of texture to it, trying to transition the texture though. And I'll probably do some other foreground imagery in here, and a nice dark black too, but I haven't decided what yet. All right, background rocks. All right. This would be a really good area right down in here, these splashing waves. This might take a little while to do. I think I'm going to give myself a nice head start just by splatter painting some white paint like right around in here. It'll give it a little bit of a sea mist, kind of splashing waves look to it. And when you do it with like a splatter painting technique, it's a little bit more varied. And kind of expedient too. Hopefully it looks better. I'll inevitably I'll add in. I usually add in some additional specific applications of white, with the pen again, because you can only kind of control so much of this splatter painting. But all right, so I'm going to have these waves kind of crashing right here, and we'll do some little splatter painting in here. This is just an old toothbrush and the Dr. Martin's bleed proof white like that. And see where I just put it in that little tip like that? But that's still like way too much, so you just squeeze out a lot of the excess out of there, because you really need very little. Okay, so I just put it in that little tip like that, but then I just squeezed out a lot of it too, because you don't want it to like drip a big blob down there. Okay. I don't know how much this is going to show. It'll show up in these little darker areas like that, but let's see. So I'm going to try to kind of add a little bit of direction to it. Okay, that's not coming out at all. I need to thin it out. I was wondering if I can just get away with it. It seemed like it was thin enough. It's a little bit too thick. This is a very opaque white paint here. It's a big medium for calligraphers doing lettering, like brush lettering or dip pen lettering on, with letter forms on dark paper. like black, white on black, or or something like that. All right, let's see here. All right, let's give it a shot again. Okay, let's see. It's like splattering like super, super thin. Like fine here. Oh, there we go. Oh, I noticed too. Okay, so I need to go like, I was going like this. I need to go like that. It splatters like in different directions sometime than what I think it will go in. All right. Anyway, I don't know if you can see that. There's this little mist down here like that. That looks like pretty good now that I look at it. Let me go with a couple layers of it. I'm having to be a little bit more aggressive with my brush. All right, but see that right down there? I don't know if you could see that, but there's a little bit more kind of movement to that area. It kind of brings in a little sense of, yeah, like visual movement to the scene when you splatter it like that. I mean, the white, the acrylic pen, you can add that down there as well, which I usually do. I'll add a little bit of high. Let's see. You got to be careful about. Well, not you don't have to be careful, but a lot of times that little paint down there of Dr. Martens, it goes up into the tip here, so you can get a little clogging at times. So you just kind of scribble it out. Oh yeah, I was going to add some down here into my sand too. Let me get that flowing here. Okay, there we go. I'll add a little bit more right next to the crest of the wave. They call that the spindrift. Or right around the lip of the wave, just for a little bit of a contrast or textural variation right in there too. All right, let me see here. This is kind of, I'm getting some paint up in my tip right here. Let's switch off to the 3mm. Let's pull out the big guns right here. This is just a felt tip, so nothing's going to be going up into the tip here. So I can get kind of a smaller dot. I don't have to go for that big dot like that. I can just kind of touch it and get, kind of a smaller dot down. But it is big, so I'll be a little bit careful about placement. If you ever add too much, just kind of wipe it off, right after you apply it. Don't let it dry, but it gives you plenty of time to kind of remove it before it dries. Like that right there, that looks a little chunky to me right there, so just kind of wipe it like that and remove it, or just kind of knock it down a little bit. Kind of that lighter area, it kind of gives it a little sparkle. Remember, it's going to dry a little bit darker than what it looks like when it's been freshly applied. All right, so it'll integrate a little bit more than it looks inherently upon application. And let me try this white up here in the trees again too. To really kind of add that brightness or lightness and shimmer in that area, like about like so. Okay. Kind of being gutsy and adding a big dollop of it right down here in my trunks, right there. I get a little bit bolder as I go along, once I get kind of the feel of it. All right. Whew. Boy, I haven't been doing like these multicolored pieces, or at least in this size, which I don't do too often, but boy, when you work a little bit larger though, it does give you an opportunity for a lot of different types of look. That's getting a little bit of glare over there, but that's how it's looking right now. And there's, I don't know, there's all kinds of little things you can still do with a lot more space, I guess, in there. All right, so I'm still thinking about this little area right there. It's a little perfect little spot for a person, or I have this horseback rider right here that would fit right in there. So I've kind of left that a little bit open like that. Thanks, Sharita. I'm glad you like it. I like how this one's coming about. All right, so see this right in here? You know how we transitioned our tones? Okay, or not our tones. Well, I guess our tones. But when we stamped out these objects like this, okay, we inked it up, and then I wiped off the bottom portions of it, okay, where it transitions like this from darker to lighter like that. That goes for the background things like the mountains and the background trees in here. A little bit right in here. So we have this this layer of mist. Now I could have colored it in where that it's not going to be remaining in there, but see these areas right in here that are lighter like that? I like to utilize that. I don't color it in because I tend to think it looks like mist or clouds, and it separates the objects. So this right here looks closer to us and that looks farther back if we retain that white area in there. But try to make it transition it a little bit. Don't just like wipe this off where it's like a hard edge, like it's all black and then nothing down below. You want to kind of just wipe off the bottom portion of it, a little bit more, and then transition it up where there's very little ink here, medium ink right here, and then kind of wetter ink up top. Okay, so when you get to this thing, this is going to, that retention of the white is really going to serve us well in here. With white pigment ink. Okay, so I'm going to go in here, and this is white pigment ink again. If you've just joined in, this is a cotton ball, and I'm adding that white pigment ink where the white is in the scene, but I'm just kind of creeping it out into the darker areas or objects around it. So see that tree right there kind of transitions kind of harsh right there a little bit. So I'm going to put this right back in here. And so see that's like a nice misty, kind of darker, and it goes medium tone to light like that. So I remedy a lot of things that might happen just in this step if things look a little bit kind of murky or whatever, or too dark, too clunkle, not gracefully toned in or colored or something like that. I just put white over the top of it or something like that, or in that area. But see that little white coming out from the background like that? So it looks like that light is kind of coming from the background and kind of creeping its way around out front. It's enveloping our trees a little bit. And see this area right down in here? I really love doing this at the base of trees like this. You see that where it's starting to glow now? So it's just light before, but now it's like a glowing light. It's like a light that's a little bit more alive. It's enveloping these objects down there and kind of creeping its way from the background to foreground. See where this is a little bit light up here? And where light meets dark, right there. We'll add a little bit of that white pigment ink like that. And see how that brings that light in front of that tree now, okay? So if you retain a little bit of that white in there, or a lighter area, then you can do this really easily and gracefully, and it looks like it kind of makes sense. It doesn't, like if I had white out here, there's no white out there. Okay, so we're saying that there's no light hitting that area, so I wouldn't add it in there. I mean, I could kind of force it in there if I wanted to, but it's just so much easier just expanding light out into those objects kind of next to it. Okay, so here's this cabin right here, and this lighter area is kind of right back in there. And I'm just kind of adding a little bit of lightness to that tree. Kind of brings the cabin out a little forward like that, a little bit more. Here's this lighter area right down in here. It's like the ocean mist or spray. And I can add some of this right over the top of some of that white pigment, white paint that was splatter painted in there. So you can add some of this in here. You can do this first and splatter paint over the top of it too. Here's this area of lightness right in here, and I'll kind of come out and diffuse some of that light out from in there. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit softer right in there. Like that. And right around in here especially. But again, I don't know if I want that nice and crisp. I might put like a little person down here. Here's this wave right here, and that's a little bit lighter, so let's add a little bit of this to it. Here's this little area of light right in here. So it's kind of taking it from kind of a, I don't know, it wasn't necessarily like a real sharp light in there or something like that with the tones, but it just looks a little bit softer in there now. Yeah, sometimes I can add too much of this, and it's like, oh my God, I made everything like way too soft, So you just go in there and just wipe some of it off if you do that, or if some areas look a little bit too, you know what I mean? It's just too much of it, which I do, like I said, in other videos, I go overboard a lot of times. But here's this area of light right in here and around those clouds, it's really, if I go with my clouds too harsh or something like that, I can just soften them up right around in here. Like that. Look at that tree right there, kind of glowing in that all-enveloping light. So I don't know. I think it like totally makes it look a lot better like this now. Some of these areas in here with that, that cloud, it's a little bit clunky, so I just kind of knock it back. It's still visible, but it's just not as prominent as before. Like, that cloud overlapping that, because I can put in a little mist like that. Oh, here's a perfect opportunity right here. Here's the mountain right here, and I stamped that other one in the background right there. Let's do this. Let's employ a little masking like that, and I'll put a little bit of cloud back there, because that's kind of, to me, that one was a little bit awkward, and the way that I colored it, so yeah, I'll attempt to remedy that right here. I mean, it wasn't like a big issue, but see, I can just see that mountain right there. You can barely see it now, but it looks like a distant mountain, so I think it, it's not like I got to cover up my mistake, to make that mistake. I mean, I think it probably looks better this way. So you just kind of go with it and kind of remedy all of your different areas, or areas that might be problem areas with a cover up technique. Which is, it's the truth that, this type of thing, it enhances, okay, but it also remedies, a lot of times. So if you learn how to use light on dark, or kind of opacity, soft tones, and sharp ones like this, light on dark, for me, it pretty much solves everything that potentially happens during the process. So it enhances it too. So I'm doing it for that sake. But a lot of times it's fixing some kind of thing that But I don't see it as a problem though. It's like, oh my god, I made a mistake. It's just like, oh, I hit that area, so that area is going to be the one that gets a little bit more pigment ink, and it just enhances everything from a textural standpoint, lighting standpoint, everything. Okay, so see this right down here, just adding a little bit right here, keeping this other areas crisp. Let's do this right here. Let's do this. Here's this island right here that I stamped out, Pine Island, and I don't know, wherever it is. But let's knock this one back. And then I stamped this one a little bit higher up. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring in some pigment ink back here. And we'll kind of knock that one back in the distance a little bit. So you're saying that there's a cloud in between there and here. It's a little bit too light right there, but again, it's going to dry and it's going to look more see-through, so it's going to be darker than that. But see how now this area right here really comes out towards us a lot more. Maybe that's a little bit too much, so I can bring in a little bit of this tone right there like that. How about right back in there in that little peekaboo area like that of white. Go like that, right in there. These rocks right here, I really like these rocks right down in here, and how that kind of turned out with those shadows and splatter painting. That area tends to, I don't know, this area right in here catches my eye a lot. Just, I don't know, for me, from a technique standpoint. Okay, so, I don't know, I haven't ruled out those light beams, but I don't know if I want to add them in anymore. I was going to do these light beams kind of coming across like this in this scene. It might be pretty dramatic, but it might look, it would be more dynamic like that, but it might look less tranquil, okay? So I might just leave it like this. So we might be kind of changing up from one of the initial kind of possible things that we do here. What you do is you scan it, print it out on a colored copier, and then you put the beams on that one, Okay, adding some of this in here. It's certainly more tranquil, I think, with this white pigment ink in here. All right. I think that will do it here. I want to let this pigment ink dry, and I want to see what we're looking at. I think, what we see is what we get with the these different colors in here. On the deciduous trees and things like that. But I want to see what these inks look like. But I think we're pretty close to, what we see is what we get right here on this piece. I don't think it's going to fade out. Sometimes like those really light tones that are super saturated, those base colors, they can dry kind of a little bit more kind of anemic looking, but we went over them with so much other media, other dye-based inks, colored pencils, and what else? I don't know, pigment ink and alcohol inks. Okay, so I think that this is largely what it's going to look like when dry, and I don't think it'll change too much. But I also want to take a look. I like the look of those little dried flowers that I added into that last reflection card that I did. And I think I might want to add some of these in here. And I want to revisit some of those glitters that I had. I wouldn't go too extreme with them, but it might be interesting just to add like a couple little pieces in here that are really super subtle, like in these real yellow areas where it's like some of those glitters, you can't even tell it's on there. But then if you go like this with it, it kind of flashes like these little glistening bits like that. And I want to take a look at some I think my Wink of Stella pens are all dry. I wanted to pull those out because I want to use those with some of my snail stamps, the bugs like the slugs. But I need to see if those are working. But I think some Wink of Stella in here where it's like, you can't even see it. And then you hold it at a certain angle and it'll kind of shimmer a little bit more. That might be kind of interesting in this piece. So I don't know. We'll test it out. But let's see. I don't know. Yeah, we're still live, Bill, I think. Looks like an early morning to me. Yeah, probably early morning, huh, Laura? It's when that mist is out before like the breeze comes in and it gets burnt off by the whatever the heat of the day, right? Yeah. One of those things too. I always mention this too. I'll mention this for the gazillion time, but when you use this like pigment ink like that, it tends to look a little bit more textural, giving your pieces a little bit more of a kinesthetic feel to it. You can, when you look at this, a scene or a photograph or something like that, you can kind of get the feel of what that being in there might look like from a kind of a subconscious, whatever, transportive type of way. But when you add in this kind of mist like this, you're saying that there's this kind of mist, there's this something in between us and the objects in the distance or whatever, you know what I mean? There's sediment in the air, there's moisture in the air. So there's the kinesthetic part of it. But on like foggier days or when there's things in the air like that, sound also becomes a little bit more muffled. Just like light has to kind of, reflect off things and get back to us. That's the same thing with sounds. So sounds become a little bit more muffled. And so you can kind of add in, what I'm saying is you can kind of add in that little sense of touch and hearing, when you add in little things like this. I mean, if it doesn't have that mist, you're saying, well, it's like a real crisp, type of sound within the pieces. But you can think of things, these little two-dimensional pieces like this, especially with scenic stamping, you can kind of give a little hint of, other sensory types of experiences just from the visual aspect of it by doing those types of things like that. So anyway, all right. So yeah, I'll do a little tweaks on this one right here. I wanted to see what this looked like in terms of potentially adding in other objects in here, like a fisherman or something like that. But I don't know. As I worked on this piece, I was thinking, okay, I want to think about this one a little bit and decide on what to add in there. I don't know, where did that Lady Rider go? But Lady Rider was something, I don't know, we can add in. There's other types of deer like this. I can have like a silhouette of this deer up here or something, you know what I mean? Looking back into the distance, so. Well, that's something that I'll figure out. Oh, here it is right here. This character right here, right on these rocks right here, could look pretty, whatever, kind of majestic, I think, right here. And it's because this area right in here is kind of It'd be like putting something right in the spotlight. I'd have them like overlooking this area on these rocks right here. I mean, you can have them down in the sand too, but I think kind of overlooking that scene like right in there might be interesting. And someone mentioned, who was it that mentioned that coffee in there? There's this lady with coffee too. Be kind of interesting standing on the rocks right here, looking out at the scenery. Yeah. All right, but yeah, I'll figure that out, and maybe utilizing some of these leaves like this. And I want to take a look at these trees right in here. I might need to go a little bit brighter with some of those colors, so additional touches with the paint pens might be in order, to bring a little bit more of that brighter yellow into, a couple spots on these foreground trees too. Oh, and then there was the foreground imagery, but that'll come after I decide what to put on right here, because I don't want to stamp in like a branch right in here, grasses, and that's covering up, it's going to be going right into someone's head or something like that. So subject matters first, foreground and color. All right. Stuff that I wouldn't think about, but this is almost a full page scene, so I want to get that right, because I'm not going to do this scene again, probably ever. So not exactly the same, but yeah, I want to go over my options. All right. And if you didn't check this out from the beginning, it's happy B-Day to Dad, who loved fishing. He was more of a saltwater guy than a freshwater guy, but I wanted to create some kind of like scenario that would be like a, you know what I mean, like a fisherman's paradise type of thing. So I generally do something like that on his birthday each year. Thanks again, everyone. And yeah, happy stamping. Fall foliage stuff. Really fun, and fun to bring out those different colors into those trees. Thanks, Megan.